Ramirez of Kung Fu Culture, and we have a very special topic, uh, the water margin, right? So I'm joined by Claire Guo, a very smart person who grew up in China and which actually is currently in China right now. So, uh, welcome, Claire.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so we want to kind of talk, not kind of, we want to talk about the this classic book that is considered one of the top four books of Chinese history, like the top four classics, right? So this is like such an important book that it still shapes Chinese culture today. They still make shows, and you can't make one movie really because it's so long. It can't you can't fit the whole story into 2 hours or even 3 hours. So the book I'm talking about is called the usually well more closely uh, called the Water Margin, but you'll have all kinds of translations, types of titles. So you might see a book called Outlaws of the Marsh, or the Outlaws of the Water Margin, or just the Water Margin. So Claire, do you think what should it be called?
Oh, as a native Chinese, I'm still familiar with the original title, 《水浒传》. But if I for the English speakers, if they want to have a general understanding about this book, maybe the outlaws at the marsh is more direct.
Yes, and so what they're talking about is not just any marsh, right? They're talking about uh, the marshy area surrounding Liangshan Mountain, or well, actually, it's what Liangshan, right? So Liang Mountain. So it is a very long story, and it has you know so like the main characters are just the main characters alone are over 100, and so then beyond that you have hundreds more because it's like let's go ahead and talk about kind of like the setting of it. So it's set in the later Song Dynasty, but it wasn't written at that time. It was written later. It was written in the later 1300s, and the song ended in the earlier than that. Right, a couple hundred years earlier. Right, does that sound all right?
Mhm.
Okay, so one of the reasons why, so basically, we would like to do a series of podcast talking about the water margin or Outlaws of the Marsh, because it is so long and it has so many subjects that are spoken about. Because it and so today we're going to be talking about the ideas of heaven and hell at that time in China, and kind of like what is the afterlife for these people and how it affects martial arts and even their motivations and stuff. Because this story, like, it's kind of funny because like it's so long that even if we wanted to give spoilers, it's like we can't give. It's so long because if we mention one thing or if we mention something that happens to somebody, it's like it might only be like this tiny little chapter in the beginning, and there's still way more story left. But ultimately, uh, we have, of course, a like many people who are in a corrupt government, and you'll have the gist of it, at least at the beginning, is that many people who want to be in the system, they they face a corrupt official, and then they get put in a position where either they submit and be punished or sometimes even killed, or they run off to the marsh. Right? So they join the outlaw, they become an outlaw. uh, and so then it just builds and increases, and but ultimately there's like that desire for some of them, right? The desire to either change the government. But Claire, can you kind of give me an idea? So, like, what are some of these understandings or motivations about like their idea of, they're like, because it's not just like, oh, I feel um, like wronged by a specific government official. It's like it goes beyond that in the water margin. There's almost like a metaphysical, right? There's like a uh, uh, like they get a mandate from heaven, so to speak, right, to continue
Mhm.
doing what they're doing.
Mhm. Oh, that's a huge topic. I think we have to go back to the traditional Chinese culture. So we have Taoism and Confucianism and Buddhism, right? So especially for in the Confucianism, it prefers for loyalty and obedience. When we say loyalty and obedience, we specifically emphasize on the loyalty to the emperor, the loyalty to your father, and to the husband in the family. That's what we define loyalty in the communism, not Confucianism, especially in the traditional setting. And obedience is like a very strict way. Let's say if the emperor orders you to sacrifice your life. So you just have to sacrifice your life. And there's no veto right for that. That's the traditional way to explain the loyalty and obedience in the Confucianism. But the 108 outlaws or heroes at Liangshan Marsh kind of evolved their own belief system. They still honor loyalty and obedience, but they have their own understanding. Let's say let's give an example like Wu Song. Wu Song is a hero. He is famous for killing a tiger. So he had a brother who was really short, and people made fun of him very often. And his sister in law was really pretty. That's why his brother was killed because his sister in law and her lover conspired to kill his brother. So Wu Song had all the solid evidence for the murderer. He should have brought them to the imperial court and sought for justice. But instead, Wu Song killed his sister-in-law and her lover directly because he was driven by the principle of blood for blood. So, in his belief system, that is the way to exercise justice. That is the way to show his loyalty to his brother. So, there are different definition and understanding about loyalty in in the Confucianism. That's why the book is fascinating. We can find people make different choices. They get a huge influence by the Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism in their belief system. But the outlaws at the marsh, they are very skillful people in martial arts, so they kind of have their own belief system. They really don't care whether they will go to the heaven or the hell. They just want to follow their heart. They have their own belief system. And especially in China, in the traditional culture, we don't have the concept of resurrection. For the people in general, after death in this life, most people will come back to the earth and have a new life, start all over again, and forget about the former ones. For the few evil ones, they will go to hell to be tortured. eternally. So what do you think, Raul?
No, it's very fascinating. So, like, you definitely encourage anyone to find a copy and read it, because because there's so many. And this is one thing, like even the word you use, right? Like these people are just called like outlaws, truly, right? It's like in the book, they're often referred to as heroes, and so sometimes the people who are really are the people who are only calling them outlaws for the vast majority of the book is like the corrupt officials, right, who hate them or who are jealous of their success. Um, so the vast majority of people, like the common people, are, um, referred to them as heroes, right? The heroes of Liangshan, and uh, from there, like how you mentioned, it's like you do have like this mix of belief systems, right? Confucianism, but then almost it feels as though they are living in an environment that is almost more harsh than like the idea of loyalty, not only to your family, your brothers, and your sworn brothers. Uh, it's like almost like it's too black and white with the laws, and so this is a big part of their kind of natural belief system to want to fight against it. And I think it almost shows that it's not bad to like rebel against that type of excessively harsh tradition.
Okay. Any more thoughts?
Yeah, because then it does get to the point where it becomes like metaphysical, where it's like, yeah, because I mean, Confucius himself was a mortal, right? And then say like later on, with regards to Confucianism by itself, later on there was some more in the point where they call Neo-Confucianism, where they kind of added some more like metaphysical aspects to it. That's not really so much in the book. What's in the book is a lot of Taoist stuff, a lot of Buddhist stuff, and you do see the heroes uh, like revering those traditions and not really like hating one or the other. You don't see them like fighting. They're just kind of like they accept like these overlapping traditions, and they seem to honor a lot of that to the point where you'll have some scenes where a character is spoken to by a representative from heaven, and or even they'll also pay respects to the dead, offering sacrifices. So there is like this mix of the belief system of the idea of justice, and the idea of trying to do what is right, even in a system that might not be following these kind of natural laws of justice.
Yeah, I think you just made a great point. So their belief is not just influenced by the Confucianism, it's a mixture of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. So for Taoism, we emphasize balance and harmony, and in Buddhism, we emphasize the compassion and karma. Let's say Wu Song again. He killed someone. He should have brought them to the imperial court, but he made a killing, but for a good cause. So that the good cause just justified his brutal behavior. So he worries nothing about going to the hell. It's nothing like the commandments in the Christianity. It's clear that you shall not kill, you shall forgive your enemies, because God will revenge for you in the last day. It's totally different in the traditional China's culture and in their own belief systems. So when I say it's a combination of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, they the outlaws also think about their their consequence of being an outlaw or kill people or being rebels. They thought about the karma. That's why another figure, Song Jiang, he's the second leader of Liangshan bandits. So his belief system is more influenced by the traditional Confucianism. So in his understanding, his father told him, you shouldn't become a bandit. You should be loyal. You should be loyal to the emperor. That's why he wanted to get an amnesty from the emperor. That's the teaching from his father. He has to be loyal to his father. On the other hand, he has to be loyal to the emperor, even though that emperor wasn't good. He was like a pushover. But to be fair, the emperor historically he was a great photographer. He was a great calligrapher, and he was good at many things except for being a good emperor. He had his merits, but he was a bad one. But in the Confucianism, you have to obey the leader or the regime of the country. So that's his belief system. But on the other hand, Song Jiang also has a great compassion to the outlaws because many of them are great people. They are very skillful martial artists. They are righteous. They went to Liangshan because they were set up by the corrupt officials, or they had trouble to make a decent living under the under this historical background because people in general was having a very challenging life. They wanted to have a good life through hard working, but it was kind of impossible for them at that time. So these factors drive them go to Liangshan. That's why Song Jiang also has a great compassion for them. So in the mixture of both compassion, loyalty, and obedience, Song Jiang chose obedience and loyalty to the emperor first. That's why he wanted all his all his crew go back to the imperial court to get amnesty so they could just wash away their shame for being a bandit or being an outlaw. They wanted fame and good reputation for their descendants. That's his belief system. I'm sure they think about karma. Like for Song Jiang, if he ended his life by being a bandit, he may think he may think he would go to hell. That's his logic.
Yeah, and
What do
what
you,
would this? Yeah, yeah. What would the like? What would hell look like to one of the main characters, Song Jiang?
oh yeah, that's a great question. So for like in Chinese traditional belief, most people will be sent back on this earth to start a new life after death, right? So there are few evils. They will go to hell to be tortured. Maybe they killed innocent one in this life, or they disobeyed the father, disobeyed the husband, or they cheated on their husband, or they killed the emperor. These ones are the people going to hell. So we have some pictures or descriptions in the scripture where you can find hell is really really scary. That's why you have to think about the karma in the Buddhism that drives you to do good in this life. But like I said, the heroes at Liangshan Marsh have their own belief system. So if they want to punish the corrupt official, they want to rob the rich, they want to help the poor, even though they did many killings, but still it's on the cause of righteousness and justice. So this goodwill justified their brutal behaviors.
Yeah, for people who might not know about it's good to read, but yeah, the book itself is actually extremely violent. There's many scenes of extreme violence and barbarity. But so just if you're not familiar with the story, just know that that is really there. A lot of brutality, a lot of like even the story we mentioned about Wu Song killing two people, right? And then but that we have 100 and we have over 100 heroes that have kind of similar in a way similar stories, right? Similar background that lead them all to the marsh at the Liangshan. And um, so it's almost like their righteousness just keeps them out of hell, right? Even though their acts are can many of them are quite barbaric, are quite just extremely violent. But it's in a way it's not barbarism or whatever, because yeah, they happen to be like these skilled, like super amazing martial artists. With all these different cool weapons, or there's even some that are just really good at like wrestling, and the really cool wrestling scene in the story. But yeah, a lot of them are like skilled at archery, or using the staff or the spear, and or even throwing rocks. Even so,
I
uh,
like that guy.
yeah, yeah, the featherless arrow.
Mhm.
uh, so yeah, there's so many amazing people, but in a way, like in their pursuit of justice, a lot of other people just get murdered, right? But in a way, it's like then the idea of hell is almost never is never a big part in their minds, right? But they are still thinking about heaven, and like they're like the what will happen to their memory. Um, but and also heaven itself seems to be in favor on their side ultimately. Is that how it seems to you, Claire?
Yes, I totally agree. So I love these 108 people because each one has a unique personality, and their belief system is a mixture of Chinese traditional culture and their own understanding. I'll give another example. Let's talk about the ranking system at Liangshan Marsh. So how do you think they put people in the high position? Who will be the leader of the Liangshan Marsh? Who will be the lower officials? What do you think the criteria they use for the 108 people?
Oh, I mean, should I give some of it away? But I mean, like a lot of it is like it's almost like you don't have to be like the highest ranking in the military in
Mm-hmm.
the national government to be
Yeah.
high ranking at Liangshan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that one of their highest ranking person was only a clerk, right,
Yes.
in the government. So very
Mm-hmm.
low ranking. Can you please like
You were
elaborate?
totally right. You were totally right. So you just made my point. So the ranking system used in Liangshan is unique. You don't have to be the most rich one, and you don't have to have a good reputation, or even you're the most skillful martial artist. Those things don't make you the leader at Liangshan. You have to have compassion for your brothers. You have to be loyal to them. You have to have the compassion for the poor. You have to hate the unjust, and you have to have the capacity to help, to support your comrades. That's how they rank different officials in their band. So let's make a comparison to the imperial court in the Song dynasty. So if you want to be a high official, and you have to be rich, You have to have a noble birthright. You have to have tons of connections in the imperial court. You have to have a good relationship with the emperor. So those things make the officials have their own ranking system in the imperial court. But these things are totally different in the Liangshan Marsh. That's why I say their belief system is a mixture of traditional culture and their own understanding.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense because it's like even and like say they're rebelling against that system, the the national system of government. But like it's like even if you are because it's so corrupt, so that to the point where it's like even if you are a high ranking official, you still have to make sure that you're bribing the right person to
Mhm.
what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like like if you read the book, I mean, you'll see that it's like it's the grease is or like the machinery totally gets oiled by bribes at every level, right?
Hmm.
So nothing can get done without um, a tip, right? So it's like why do people complain about tipping culture in the United States when ancient China was like everything was a tip, right? It's like
Hmm.
you see it out in the book. It's like everyone has to give a lot, like expensive gifts to get anything done, and usually the corrupt people will be heavily bribing all the others to make sure that legally they get their way, which is really unfortunate. And then it's basically the cause of the rebellion or the cause of the
Hmm.
people wanting to fight back or to at least to escape that. I think at first they need some kind of escape from the system, and then later it kind of gets recognized as a rebellion against corruption ultimately. But the interesting thing though is that it's not necessarily a corruption against like the government in its entirety, right? It's not a rebellion against the emperor, but it's a rebellion against corrupt officials.
Yeah, that's another example to explain the loyalty in Confucianism. So the outlaws, they are very skillful martial artists. They have the skill to kill a person or an entire army. But they always say, "Oh, we sustain the emperor." There are just some corrupt officials in the system that make people in general living in miserable. We always sustain the emperor. So that's another formal translation about loyalty in the Confucianism. So we have to be loyal to the regime. You could say, oh, there are just a few bad apples in the system. There's nothing wrong with the system. The system is still perfect. There are just a few bad apples in the system. That's why I love these 108 heroes. They why they call Song Jiang the leader. They call him the big brother. I'm not saying the big brother watching you all over the time. They respect him. Song Jiang isn't the most skillful one in the whole band, but why people respect him? Because he helped so many outlaws to escape from the punishment of the corrupt officials. He helped so many people, even though his followers or his minions are full of skillful martial artists, but they are still loyal to him. They respect him because he wants to help the outlaws. He has compassion for them. And but also one thing I don't like about Song Jiang is he wants to fight his way back to the corrupted system. That's
Yeah,
his side.
yeah, he wants to get reintegrated to that corrupt system
Mhm.
without trying to fix it. Which
Mhm.
there is a like even a scene where um I heard that like in the book it's not it's a little subdued, but I heard like in the movie there or like in the with the TV show or whatever that they make it a little bit more dramatic. But there's like one very high ranking government official, so Gao Chu, right when Song Jiang's nice to him in front of Lin Chong, where so like one Gao Chu really destroyed the life of Ling Chong, and then Song Jiang is nice to this guy when they have a chance to even just kill him straight out, right? So that's kind of that goes to your point where it's like Song Jiang in particular, their leader, wants to reintegrate to this corrupt system,
Mm-hmm.
even to the even though like these people have traumatized these heroes, right? And it's like, do you think that's a failure for Shengjiang to sorry, Songjiang to just be more almost like a like he kind of rolls over just to reintegrate into the governmental system as opposed to trying to reform the system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great question. I think it's up to how you define loyalty and righteousness. So in Song Jiang's belief system, he believes that he has to fight his way back to the imperial system. He doesn't want to be a bandit for the rest of his life, and also he doesn't want that for his descendants. That's why he wanted to fight his way back, even if it will cost his life during the way. That's his that's his understanding about karma. If he died as a bandit, he will probably go to hell. But other people, other comrades at Liangshan Marsh, have different understanding. For them, in general, they will think, oh, I have tons of ways to kill a people because I'm a very skillful martial artist. But when I make a kill, it has to be a noble cause. When they kill a people, maybe it's a injust people. Maybe they are a rich people who rob the poor. When they make a kill, they have to have a noble cause. That's their belief system. Even they killed tons of people in this life, they are not afraid that they're going to hell because they are being righteous in this life from the beginning. Even though they are outlaws, they killed people, still they have their own belief system.
So do you think just overall, like, so of course, like the idea of justice is like the main like mindset that they have, but just in the background, do you think they just accept the idea that okay, well, like there's some well, they think in the background they're just thinking like, okay, either hell or reincarnation. Is that kind of what they're thinking? So either I go to hell or I get reincarnated after I die. What?
Yeah, I think that's the common concept in China's traditional culture. I'm not sure if you remember a part where Song Jiang said a prayer for Chao Gai. Chao Gai was the first leader at Liangshan Marsh, and he prayed that Chao Gai can have a second life sent back on the earth, which means he was a good people. That's why he got the chance to be sent back on the earth to have a second life.
Mhm. Yes. So do you think that is that would that be considered parts of like both Buddhism and Taoism together, or do you think it's more Buddhism like or more Taoist like to think that way?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm not sure I have enough knowledge to answer that. But from my own understanding, it's all about how do you define it. So like for Song Jiang, like I said, he's more preferred to the loyalty in Confucianism, but it still depends on how you define loyalty. So his loyalty depends on his contribution to the emperor. So for Wu Song killed his sister-in-law to avenge for his brother. For him, he's loyal to his brother. So in their individual belief system, they think they both will go to heaven because they are loyal, but they just have different understanding about loyalty.
Mhm. Yes. So then, do they have kind of like a similar idea of like as opposed to like say like in Buddhism where it's like you keep reincarnating until you can kind of transcend the idea or transcend that cycle of reincarnation?
Hmm. Oh, maybe you could ask a monk to be your guest speaker. I couldn't answer that question. Yeah, I think the most pattern is we keep having a second life. We keep sent back to the earth after this life. That's the general concept for Chinese traditional culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish in a way it's like well, if anyone wants to comment, if anyone listening or watching wants to comment too, because the book is quite long, but there are some scenes where Song Jiang actually has like encounters, right, with like the supernatural, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes it is like this the the representative of heaven kind of, but also then he does have like ghost encounters too, right? Where there's even like the ghost of a dead monk that talks to him, and so I mean there is like these, and that monk happens to be a Taoist, right? I believe. So they have like a Taoist
Hmm.
um, temple nearby where they happen to be, uh, in that point in the story. So,
Hmm.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of overlap, and but still a lot of reverence to the idea of both like Taoism and Buddhism.
Hmm. Yes, you made a great point. It inspires me to think why Song Jiang has to fight his way back to the imperial court because he had the dream. He dreamed about the heavenly goddess to give him a heavenly book. So that book guided him all his path, fighting back to the imperial court. He thinks it's not his own will to get a amnesty in the official system. He has a cause from the heaven which support him to make that big decision.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's one of the major driving forces because he could have been a little bit more like lost in like wondering like, yeah, it'd be great to get amnesty, but it's taking a long time, and we're just here living in Yangshan, and um but I think that whole encounter where he's given the heavenly book, that it it almost like reaffirms his mission to the point where he can get annoying, or or even other I mean, at least kind of like the way the book's written, it's like sometimes even the other heroes are kind of like, oh, come on, because he definitely stays consistent, right? Or how do you feel like Sung Young pretty much stays consistent the whole,
Hmm.
at least once he becomes in charge, and then he gets the almost like the encouragement from heaven, and then his whole idea, it stays consistent. His whole motivation stays consistent,
Hmm.
to the point where even some of his his sworn brothers do complain about it, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. I want to say each people has different aspiration for this life, and Song Jiang's biggest ambition is to have a higher rank in the imperial system. That is his dream during the entire story. And after he had that dream with the heavenly goddess, that emphasized his ambition, and that dream made him believe he's doing the right thing. But for his comrades at Liangshan Marsh, I think they have different aspirations for their lives. For most of them, I think they just want a place where they can use their skills in martial arts. They just want to do the right thing. What is the right thing for them? Stay with the brothers, uphold the righteous ones, rob the rich, help the poor, and they may can also practice martial arts every day. They can drink together, fight together. That's what they want. For Li Kui is a hero in the Liangshan March, right? But Li Kui is also like a sidekick for Song Jiang. So in Li Kui's belief system, I really don't think he cares nothing about heaven or hell. All he wanted is to show his loyalty and support to Song Jiang, his big brother, and Li Kui wants to spend time with all other brothers in the Liangshan bandits. I think that's what he wanted for this life.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point because he's
Mhm.
he's definite. So I'm glad you made me think of Li Kuei as at that when you were talking. So I'm glad you brought it up. But yeah, he's definitely not thinking about the future at all, right? He's just like,
On the
oh, there's some,
outside now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like, if there's any bad guy, oh, let's go. Like,
Kill him.
yes,
I'll
let's go
just
kill
kill
this.
him.
Yeah, kill first and
Yeah,
then
chop his
ask
head
questions.
off.
Yeah,
It's that
yeah,
simple for him.
yeah. So it doesn't it ends up um like showing the whole idea of where it's like their personal each of them have different personal belief systems, and a lot of them aren't necessarily thinking about the idea of like say heaven or hell or what happens after they die, because they can totally die, right? They're actually fighting with, like with weapons and knives and arrows and swords.
Mhm.
So they can easily get killed, but that's like not even that's not the first thing they're thinking about.
Yes, because they are like the military people. They are martial artists. Even they got killed in the combat. So they died for a big cause. They died for a good reputation. They don't mind about that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, great point. So then, I think maybe we can kind of uh, end this podcast for at least this topic. I definitely want to talk more about different, because this book is very long and there's many versions of it. Right, there's even one of the shorter versions is 70 chapters. Right? So, but it's definitely not a complete story. It's definitely that's also a really interesting, like that edition is one of the older ones that has an interesting story as to why it only has 70 chapters. Right, the author himself didn't believe in the idea of reintegration, right, with the corrupt government, so he kind of ends it at a certain level. So at a certain point in the story, but there are um, different editions. And so the story does go on, and so I kind of want to. It basically has some. There's so much to it that there's so many different topics that we can cover about, like just about the story. Uh, Hopefully, this was interesting to people because I mean, there's just so many different characters. We've mostly focused on one of the main guys, Song Jiang. But yeah, there's so many wonderful people like Li Kuei, and you mentioned the wrestler, right? So um, Yan Qing. But then even we kind of mentioned Lin Chong, which is his story. Really, is heartbreaking, and it shows the level of corruption in the government. I think his story is almost like the best example as to why the government should have been reformed, or or if they're like, you can kind of get to the point where you think, like, should this be reformed, or should it be dismantled? And we kind of see the history in China where it's like they're not run by the song anymore. So and so yeah, over time that system was ultimately dismantled, the Song Dynasty system.
May I have 2 more minutes to sell
Sure,
this a little bit?
sure, yeah.
So this is our first episode about the water margin. So for the audience, please ask more questions or comments if you feel interested about this book. And so in the beginning, you said the water margin was the most famous for ancient literatures in China. So why do you think that's the classic one? So for myself, I can give you three answers. First one is about language. For English readers, you may find it's hard to tell because for different English translations, they dropped many Chinese poems in it. I understand because there's a huge difference between Chinese and English. It's kind of impossible to translate a Chinese poem into English. But I have to say, the writing in the book is classic, it's fascinating. That's the first reason to make it a classic book. The second one is the storyline. We don't want to spoil every story for the audience, but you may find the storyline is fascinating. You can find anything you like in the book. Like there's betrayal, there's politics, and there are wives cheating on their husbands, and the emperor even built a tunnel to the brothel so he could see his lover. So you can find, and there's many real combats and all kinds of skills in martial arts. You can find anything you like, and fantasy, even fantasy. That's the second reason. The third one is the meaning implied by the book. Like like we talked about the unique belief system for the Liangshan bandits and the traditional culture at that time. So you can find something you are familiar with in your belief system, and both in this book. For there are 108 heroes. I'm sure you can find at least one you like the most. Maybe part of you are living in that 108 heroes. What do you think, Rabu? Why do you think it's classic? You almost finished this book, right? And why do you
Yeah,
think it's not like we give a label to this book? So for you personally, why do you think it's classic for you?
oh, well, even like the epic scope, and like kind of like how you mentioned just right now, where it's all the different layers of society, right? So, or even like, so when I mention, or when I say society, it's like it has the different layers of, say, like you have the personal layer, right? Like the town layer, and then you have the provincial layer where you have dealings with um, corrupt officials of the provincial layer, and then you get to the state, and then you'll have like these ideas between the metaphysical, where you have like the religious and the idea of the supernatural as well, but then it's all part of this system where it kind of emphasizes the idea of justice, but it is like all these different all these different individual characters are like their own person. They all have their own different belief systems. So, like you mentioned, it's like there's so many. They're so rich that, and then so alive and so real that you can you can probably find several of them, several characters, several heroes that you like. And unfortunately, there's several like corrupt people that you'll probably just hate, right? So there's a lot there for the reader, to enjoy. You can be happy. You can celebrate with the heroes when some of the things they're fighting for, when they're able to achieve their goals. And but the thing is, I don't want it to sound like, or to seem like, it's an easy story where it's like, oh, you have people who are being wronged and they they fight back and they overcome. No, it's not. It does have the layer of tragedy, and so it is uh, yeah, pretty realistic though. He's ultimately, it is like a historic fiction, but it's set in a real time period with real like scenarios that occurred in history. So if you want to like get a window as to like what life was like in the Song Dynasty, it's very fascinating. And actually there was a yeah, there's several locations that they go to. It's like I wish I could have seen these locations at that time. Right? Even when they talk about like being in the area, fighting back some people who were trying to invade the country, and like they were in the what is like now like the Beijing area, and
You know what? Then you have to visit me in China. We have the film casting area in my city, Wuxi, China.
oh yeah, actually, can you mention that real quick? That you actually, so there's a lot of the book that kind of takes place near where you live, right? Like
Yes.
several locations are, or even where
Mm-hmm.
Ling Chong. So we talk about Ling Chong a lot because I think we can talk about him a lot because his main part happens at the very beginning of or kind of like the very close to the beginning of the story. So I feel more comfortable talking about Ling Chong, um,
Save
because
it
it's not
for
really
our next
spoiling.
episode for Lin Chong. We can talk more about his book, his story.
Yeah, yeah, and then so yeah, but can you kind of tell us like your connection to at least a lot of the locations, right? Ling
Mm-hmm.
Chung in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had to in the book he has to walk to your ancestral home. Yeah, doesn't he? He has to. Did you say something like that? Where so basically they're real locations, and they still still exist today. So
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a look back in time to like real places. So it's not so in that it's a historical fiction. So realistic scenario, real scenarios that occurred, but not exactly with our heroes, right? So stuff like so it, but it's still very realistic, and the troubles that they have at that time still resonate today, right? Still troubles that we have today. Um, so it's entertaining, but gives you a lot to think about. Mhm. What do you think, Claire?
Yeah, I think you made a fair comment on the Chinese classic. Do we have any questions for now?
No, I don't think so. We'll see. So
Yeah,
those few of you who are watching, feel free
could
to
give
comment.
a brief description to our audience what we will have for the next episode, for the following episodes about the water margin. You definitely want to talk about the story of Lin Chong. I love that guy too.
Yes. Yep, the Panther head. So actually, the other thing that's interesting about or that's fun about the story is like everyone has a nickname. So that's always fun to learn, right?
Mhm.
So there's always really cool things about each hero that I think it really makes you love these people.
Yes.
And but yes, there's definitely a lot of different topics that we
Mhm.
want to cover because it's very fascinating how like the author uh, treats different people. Like you kind of mentioned, where we do tend to see a lot of the female characters or the women in there being unfaithful, and so we kind of want to do a discussion on that, like the view of women at that time, or at least by the author, and the portrayal of women. But there, with that being said, like there are some amazing women characters in the book, and who are also really good martial artists. So, um, it is very complex. So that's why there's so many different topics that you can talk about in this book.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds really exciting because you mentioned this topic before, just in this day, because the 108 heroes at Liangshan Marsh are actually stars in the heaven, sent on the earth. So they are the representative of the Taoist horoscope or the zodiac. That's why they have their own personality, they have their own belief system. So maybe you said we could talk about the personality within the different martial artists, and we could talk about feminism with martial arts. That's all sound very exciting.
Yes, so we're going to talk about it anyway. So, if anybody has a question about anything in particular, so now's your chance. If you haven't read the story, I would say actually like try your best to read the story. You know, get a copy of the book or the audio book, um, as opposed to like watching a synopsis or listening to some kind of synopsis, or I would say even watching the show. Because actually, there's one thing in particular where there is you shared with me. There's this wrestling match in the story that's really cool, but it's actually not that long in the book. But then in the TV show, they make it all like kung fu like. In the book, in the description in the book, it's more realistic, but then it's a little bit more was it like wires and doing all it's a try your best to familiarize your story or familiarize yourself with the story anyway, and then so this is your chance to start thinking about it. Like, yeah, you can start off with maybe there's plenty of YouTube videos that talk about the story, they give you a synopsis about it, but I did try to look at some, and some, like, because say Claire and I really like that character Ling Chong, and some of the synopsis that I've seen, they really glaze over a lot of the beautiful. There's a lot of really great things in his story in particular. A lot of beautiful details that I think maybe we'll talk. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Ling Chong in the next episode. I think we just really like that guy a lot. So, and then maybe we can even talk about Li Kuei because he's
Yeah,
he's pretty
I
amazing.
like
Right?
it too.
Yeah, but Ling Chong in particular, his story has a lot of details, and some of these synopses that I was looking at, they glaze over some of the most beautiful details. So, because I like to, like, when I do like the podcast, I like to try to maybe give some ideas of or give some resources for someone who might want to look into the story. So I can't at this moment I can't really recommend a YouTube video to watch about it. Um, but yeah, so try to find, there's different editions of the book. Oh, but there is like the long water margin podcast. That's pretty good, I think,
Mhm,
for
mhm,
someone who wants to listen to it. And yeah, the other thing is, yeah, there's some English translations that use like old British style uh, ways of romanizing the Chinese name. So it's just I hate that in particular because it doesn't the way they translate the Chinese names makes it like unintelligible. It doesn't sound like actual Chinese, so it's not a way to learn. I don't know how that system really developed, and so for me, I think it just makes it more confusing when you don't have a precise way to learn how to pronounce these words or these names. So, but try your best. There's plenty of editions of the book, so I think it's worthwhile like digging into the water margin or outlaws of the marsh or outlaws of the water margin. So you can look up uh, these different versions or look up these different titles and see if you can find some version. And I even noticed that this book is so important that recently there's been an all woman version of the book that a modern author uh, has. I haven't read it, but like yeah, it's they said it with women as the heroes, so that might be interesting. But just to show, like I would say, read the original one first, and then. But the reason why I'm bringing the book up, where they changed all the heroes to women, is to show just this story is that important, where it still lives on, even though it's so old. It is still relevant and important to this day. What do you think, Claire?
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I'm looking forward to our next podcast talking about Lin Chong and Li
Yeah,
Kui.
yeah. Maybe we can do one on Ling Chong and then one on Li Kui, so we can like just focus on some of these details, especially of Ling Chong. I think I really like a lot of his stories, um, and in a way, Li Kui is also one of those types of characters. He's kind of the same the whole time, but it's like lovable, right? Um, all right. Okay. So we'll go ahead and end it here. And so again, feel free to comment, ask any questions, especially afterward. You can always write it in the description box. You can also, if you want to support us, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. That's on our YouTube channel. You can just click join. We try to have a bunch of different like members only videos on there that only you can see. So that we have a lot of kung fu stuff that it's like different self defense um, techniques, like a lot of the Chinese wrist locks, a lot of the sanda techniques, like so the Chinese kickboxing techniques. So we have a lot there for members. So feel free to help us out. And I guess, thank you very much, Claire, for joining
Thank
us.
you for having me. I was having fun.
Yeah, it's such a great story. So, and a lot of lovable characters. So, yeah, so we'll be back. Yeah, I think we probably decided to just the next one talk about all the different layers of Ning Chong's story. So we'll be back with that.
Hmm.
All right, so thank you very much for listening or watching, and we'll see you next time.